seems like a talented dude, a fast guy. Mike, he's a speedster in some respects. So, certainly hope it works out. But it certainly got people talking this earlier in the year. We usually don't get to do this second guessing stuff till later in the year, but it gave us a chance to do that, Mike. So 10 opt-outs, that's kind of where we stand, and that's, again, where we are right now. I think the deadline to opt out is passed. But again, obviously this being sort of a free year, that does not mean that at some point in time somebody else might not decide to step away for whatever reason that might be. So unfortunately, unlike many seasons, this will probably be a fluid year from a roster standpoint. So I guess we'll have to just keep our eye on these kind of things.
Is it possible for any of these guys that have opted out to change their mind later? Like in Major League Baseball, who was it Markakis that didn't start the year, and then after a couple games said, you know what, I miss my guys and I want to come back and I want to play. Is that allowed? Do we know?
I don't know. It's a great question. It's probably, I know there was a deadline, right? So anytime there's a deadline, it leads you to think that you cannot make a decision past that. However, with so many things going on, and who knows where the season goes at some point. Right now, Gowan's interesting because he's already declared for the draft. But let's say there's some issues on the D line and two guys get hurt and we're at game 6. And maybe the numbers are better or somebody's feeling better about it. And Kalia Davis says, hey, you know what? I want back in. My guys are hurt. They need us. They need depth. I feel good where I'm at now. My situation has improved, or I feel better about my situation. I want back in. I don't know what the NCAA would do about that. I feel like this is the one year they'd be flexible. I guess is that a school decision at that point? Do they want to let him back in? I don't even know, but I would think there'd be some window of opportunity to come back, but I guess I don't know if it's been really clearly defined for anybody yet.
I haven't heard anything either way, so I guess we'll all learn together if that situation happens at some point.
I do know. I think one of these players. I don't want to name it specifically because I don't have it directly. But there was some chatter going on out there that one of these guys was really a late add to this list and kind of wrestled with that decision and kind of at the 23rd hour, if you will, decide to opt out. So again, it makes you wonder: could these guys decide to opt in? Maybe someone's situation changes. Maybe there's some family stuff going on, and that subsides. Maybe there's some concern about vaccines or health, and that is eradicated. There's some new testing that's coming out that makes them feel better. I don't know. I guess just stick tight. I guess the roster is going to be sort of like a revolving door throughout the entire season. So I guess sit tight, and as we know more about who's coming in, who's coming out, obviously we will. We'll keep you informed, Mike. But speaking of rosters, this weekend was NFL Cutdown Day. So the National Football League had to get their rosters down to 53. And so we had some movement with our Knights this weekend, Mike. So let me run through these really quickly. These are guys who made rosters, who were on teams, on active rosters this year. Mike, I'll go through this. You let me know if any of these surprise you. We have Jordan Akins staying with Houston. Traquan Smith is still with New Orleans. Matt Prater with Detroit. Brashad Perryman, although injured, still with the Jets. Tristan Hill actually allegedly will be a starter at Dallas, which is a really interesting 180 because he certainly had a rough rookie season. Latavius Murray is still with New Orleans. Mike Hughes still with Minnesota. Shaquille Griffin still with Seattle. And A.J. Bouye with Denver. Charlie Hewlett, who is the long snapper at Cleveland. And in probably the biggest surprise, Mike, Bruce Miller made the Jacksonville Jaguars. Those are your current Knights who are on active rosters in the NFL. Mike, surprises from that list for you?
Guys that have been around the league for a while, like Latavius Murray and A.J. Bouye. Those are no surprises. Guys that are sticking in there now for a few years, like Akins. Tristan Hill is a little bit of a surprise because we saw him take that step backwards last year. But he's starting now. Does that have a lot to do with the injuries the Cowboys have had on the defensive line? Right? They signed. Who was the big sign they had from Tampa? Yeah,
they had Gerald McCoy tore, I think, a tricep or something which is not fun to tear. New coaching staff. So Tristan Hill was drafted under the Jason Garrett regime, and that was Rod Marinelli was his D coordinator at that point. They're now gone. So new coaching staff has come in, and I guess Tristan earned a starting job, or at least he's in that rotation for a starting job. So that is surprising too. I think the other name that had been bandied about a little bit with some conjecture was whether or not Traquan Smith would make the Saints. I know there's some conversation about that too as well. I also should mention, Mike, I guess I left it off here, but Gabe Davis also made the Buffalo Bills, which was obviously no surprise. He's actually had a really good camp. There's a lot of Bills Mafia has now united with UCF Twitter Mafia, and that seems to be a marriage made in heaven because you see a lot of good commentary as well too. So Gabe seems to have solidified a spot and maybe get some playing time this year as well. Matt Prater hanging on. We just had him on a few weeks ago. He's the longest tenured guy in this list here. And Brashad Perryman, who came off a really good year for Tampa, Mike, looks like he's dealing with some injuries. So we'll see what we get there. Some of the recent guys, though, so these were some commentaries that happened over the weekend. So Adrian Killens, Nate Evans, both got cut from their respective teams, Philadelphia and Jacksonville. Shortly thereafter, though, Adrian Killens was picked back up. He'll be on the practice squad for the Eagles, and Nate Evans was picked back up. He will be on the practice squad for the Jaguars. But, Mike, probably the most surprising information over the weekend, Shaquem Griffin was cut by the Seattle Seahawks. He became a free agent, essentially, cleared waivers, was not signed by any other team, and will reunite with Seattle, but this time only on the practice squad, which you might ask yourself, what does that really mean? I don't have his entire contract in front of me, but it sounds like it's a pretty significant pay cut, somewhere to the tune of like $700,000 he'll lose from his rookie salary contract to now being a practice squad player, Mike. Surprises on the practice squad guys, either with AK, Evans, or Shaquem?
A little surprised with Killens. We heard so much about him throughout the training camp, how well he was doing. And he came out and started talking about how he was the fastest guy on the Eagles and making news like he did right before the Peach Bowl, saying the SEC wasn't ready for his speed. And then they cut him a couple days later. But
I guess they weren't ready.
That was a little disappointing. But actually, for me, when I heard that news, I was disappointed for him, but I was kind of happy. I thought he was going to be off the Eagles, and I thought maybe some other team would pick him up and I could really root for him again. And now here he is back with the Eagles practice squad. Shaquem, that news hurt. That one hurt because, everybody loves him. And he's back in the practice squad. Guys, just because they're on the practice squad doesn't mean they're done, especially in a year like this. Who knows what's going to happen with injuries, and then now the coronavirus taking guys off rosters. People may be testing positive. These guys on the practice squad, the NFL does it to them because, like you said, it's a money-saving thing. They have to get rid of some guys. They only have so many they can pay so much at a time. But these guys can definitely make their way back into the league on the team and make an impact during this season for sure. So they're not done. But it did hurt a little bit to see.
Well, the interesting thing too, so the NFL actually raised the limit of guys who could be on the practice squad. It was previously 10. This year it's 16. And so maybe that gives some guys a little bit of an extra chance, right? Maybe an AK or a Nate who would have been that 11th or 12th guy now gets a chance to stick around for a season. And to your point, continue to practice and learn systems and get reps and show coaches what they can do. If there's obviously changes within, the actual active roster, injuries or anything else, then maybe they get a chance to jump up. So this actually maybe potentially helps some of these guys. I think for Shaquem, it's obviously probably pretty disappointing. Surprised he didn't get picked up elsewhere. And maybe there's just so much uncertainty with everything going on right now that, no one wants to take a chance at this point. It's interesting, but his brother Shaquille, he's in a contract year, so you got to wonder what the future holds for the Griffins. But at least Shaquem gets to hang around. He's familiar with Seattle. He knows the program, knows the city, knows the team. So we'll see how that shakes out. But that certainly did sting a little bit. And then Mike, a couple things that stung as well that we still haven't adjudicated out here. Jordan Franks was cut by the Bengals. I don't believe he's re-signed anywhere yet. Wyatt Miller was let go by the Dallas Cowboys. He is also not re-signed yet. In a surprise, or maybe it's a surprise, I'm not really sure. It seems like good press was coming his way, but the Minnesota Vikings released Neville Clark. And as of this recording, he still has not signed anywhere, did not come back to their practice squad. Again, this is interesting, Mike, because there were reports out of Minnesota that he'd played really well. You're hearing some chatter, some articles that he's been doing a good job. He was out playing some of the other guys, but when push came to shove, he got cut, and other guys got re-signed to their squad. He did not. So not sure what that means, Mike. But were you surprised that Neville Clark did not A, hang on in Minnesota, and B, didn't get picked up elsewhere?
Yeah, that was a little surprising. I did see a couple of highlights here and there throughout camp, and he looked like he was doing pretty well. All reports, like you said, he was doing well. But what round was he? He was a sixth rounder?
He was undrafted.
He was undrafted. Yeah, see, that's the whole thing. I mean, especially in a year like this when there's no preseason games to really make a name for yourself. Say, usually in a typical year, you have 4 preseason games. These guys are out there against other teams really showing what they can do. They didn't have that chance this year. I know they have scrimmages, but that's just not the same. So the teams are going to stick with the guys they drafted, especially those first through fourth round picks. There's no way those guys are getting cut. And then the fifth and sixth rounders, seventh rounders, sometimes they will, if they're outperformed by these guys that aren't drafted. But if the team's already invested money in them, most likely those guys are going to stick on the roster, and the guys that are not drafted are going to end up getting cut. And that's just what happened here.
Yeah, I know Neville's dad was on Twitter kind of explaining a little bit about some of the back and forth. Sounds like maybe there's some other stuff behind the scenes. And so, who knows, to your point, what was really happening. Obviously, a lot of these decisions are interesting. These are money decisions. These aren't always playing decisions. So you never really know what this is going to, lead up to. But, ultimately, I guess we'll see where that goes from there too, Mike. And then a couple of guys who maybe folks aren't even tracking to this, that are free agents that don't yet have a home. So Clayton Geathers played in the 19 season with the Colts. He is without a team so far. Kamal Ishmael last played with the Falcons. He is without a team. And our very own Blake Bortles, he is also still signed and without a team. So those three guys are still out there, Mike. The Bortles, I read an article over the weekend, or maybe later last week, that he was going to be patient and sort of wait it out and see what happens, which is interesting because one of the things that happened over the weekend was the Eagles, speaking of the Eagles, they signed Josh McCown, who's 614 years old, and they put him on their practice squad. They're going to pay him, I think it was $12K a week, and he will just continue to live in Texas. He won't actually be around the team. And they're going to sign him as their emergency quarterback. If something happens, he knows the system. They'll keep him away. So there's any concerns with virus or contamination or whatnot. And if something happens, he will come in. But if not, he'll just sit on the practice squad and make $12K a year. Maybe that's a route Bortles goes at some point. But it sounds like he was being patient with what his next move might be.
Yeah, Blake sounds like he's being very careful to where he wants to go. Maybe a place where he knows he can get some playing time, because it may be his last stop wherever it is now. The reputation he built up in Jacksonville hasn't helped him. He didn't get any playing time with the Rams. So now he's looking for that shot, and he's going to be patient about it, which is probably a smart thing to do. Wait for the perfect opportunity. I mean, what's he going to sign for $12,000? What's that going to do for him? The guy has already made his millions. He got paid nicely with his first contract. So he's going to sit it out, and the opportunity may come. This is a year where things are going to open up. At some point, he may find himself on a roster. If that's what he still wants to do, I'm sure that's what he wants to do, right? He's still a young guy.
Yeah.
How old is Blake? Yeah. He can't be more than 30-something, early 30s, right?
Yeah, I imagine he still wants to play. I mean, it depends. If there's no one kind of giving him big money, if he can sit at home and just make $12K a week, maybe he says, fine, I'll do that, right? And then, at the end of the year, he goes back and tries to get back on a team in a regular contract when things are more normal. But yeah, surprised to see, Geathers has had a pretty solid career. So has Ishmael. Ishmael had a tryout with the 49ers, but left without a contract. So, those are still names that, veteran defensive guys. But again, a lot of the stuff is a money driven decision. So we'll see. But that's where we're saying. The other name, by the way, Justin McCray, he is signed with the Falcons as well, offensive lineman. So he's the last name that I forgot to mention so far. So that is a Nights in the NFL update. Again, a busy weekend from the roster perspective in the NFL. So, season kicks off Thursday night, Mike. It just snuck up on you. Like you said, there was no preseason. And so it snuck up on people. But Thursday night, they're going to put the ball in the air. I think it's Kansas City and Houston are play. So you'll actually get to see Jordan Akins specifically. So NFL is here, and I guess keep an eye out for it too, Mike. What else is here, though? And we'll talk about this a little bit later on tonight in your picks segment, but actual college football was played this weekend. A couple of American Conference teams played. Quick score updates there. SMU squeaked one out against Texas State, 31-24. Memphis looked all right. They looked a little sloppy at times, but they ended up holding on for a win, 37-24 against Arkansas State. And then BYU and Navy are playing on Monday night. As we record this, Mike, the first quarter's wrapped up. BYU is up 14-0. So that at least some American games got kicked off this weekend, Mike. Real football has begun.
The American hasn't looked too great, huh? BYU's up 14-0 right now?
14-0.
Oh, boy. And we talk about my group that I started. We all started a picks group. I think a lot of people were very confident in how the American was going to perform in this first week. And SMU kind of looked a little sloppy. Memphis didn't look as great as everybody thought they would be. And Navy's falling behind is not a good thing for Navy. Usually a running team down by 2 touchdowns early they still got time to pull it out. But